I have dried the watercolor paint on my watercolor paper, which is in a journal, a Strathmore visual journal. It's 140-pound watercolor paper in a spiral bound journal, which helps it to stay flat a little bit more. But anytime you add a bunch of water, it might get a little bit wobbly. You just do your best to work with it. But this is a really, really loose piece, and most of the time we're working pretty loosely anyway. So in the end, it doesn't make too much of a difference. And then after it's all dry, you can put some wax paper in between or plain paper, and wax paper is better because then it doesn't stick so much, or freezer paper, and then you can lay it flat and put some heavy books and supplies and whatever on top, or you can just stand it up, and somehow it often seems to work itself out. So I'm going to go ahead and start drawing now. Not really worrying about that. It's a little wobbly right now. There are some parts where I added a little bit more color on top of the first layer, and then we see some variation and a little bit more saturation there. That is up to you. That is to your discretion. And you can start adding lines with your pen. And as I mentioned before, it can be the Faber-Castell Pitt Artist pen, the Sharpie Ultrafine felt tip pen, or marker, or the Sharpie pen with a fine point, and or the Micron pens. And I haven't found a significant difference that would make me recommend one over the other for any of these purposes. I just kind of use them all. I tend to gravitate towards the Faber-Castell ones, but they are not necessarily smudge proof. It doesn't really matter so much in this application, but just so you know, in the long run. So if there are a few ways you can approach this, you can start adding your own concentric circles, your jumping off points, your anchoring points, whatever you want to define them as, if you want to define them. You can add them one circle at a time and then build, or you can go around and do them all over the page. There's no rule that says that you have to do it one way or the other. And I'm not using anything to help me make circles here, and you don't have to follow the colors exactly. It's all very loose. And if you really, really wanted to, you could use templates or the compass and then go back over and trace it later. I found that when I use the compass and I trace over it later, it's not that much neater, honestly. But it does help a little bit, so I still use it here and there. When you get to the edges like this, you don't have to make sure that your circle is complete. You don't have to like squish your circle to make it complete the page. In fact, if you let the circle run off the edge of the page, it makes it look more like a continuous design rather than something you forced to be in the middle. And then if you run into another circle like that, you can act as if they are layered, and this one is laying over top of that one. My own personal preference about watercolors. I find them really fun, but at the same time, if you do a lot of layers, they do end up being rather chalky and dry, ironically. These are called watercolors. And just as a sensory preference for me, and everybody has their own sensory preferences, I don't like dry, chalky things. Not that I'm saying that you should have a problem with it, but if you know that you have a problem with dusty, dry, chalky things, then you might not like layers of watercolors or pastels, chalk pastels. A certain amount of them I can deal with, but then after a while it just gives me heebie-jeebies. It's like some people have issues with scratchy things or things with too much texture, although there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason because there are a lot of things that I like texture with. So just know what your preferences are. That's the most important thing. Not that you should never challenge your thing, whatever your thing is. That was kind of my job as an occupational therapist with kids who have sensory issues. We had to kind of challenge them to tolerate things. So to a certain extent, sure, go ahead. But you don't want to create this fight or flight reaction so that you shut down and don't really know why. And again, just a reminder, these are really loose. You can think of this as being whimsical, wild, free, uninhibited mandalas we're creating. I tend to create a smaller circle right there in the middle. And if you like that or want to try it out, you can do that, but it doesn't mean that you have to. Again, it's just another point of reference, another place to work from. And I think that we have our guidelines to work with. I'm going to add some long petals. So I've gone at the 4 directions, north, south, east, and left, or east and west. Up, down, right, and left. And then you can go at the 45-degree angles. Just added a star in the center. There were some loose and connected points there, so I just added another circle, and then I'm going to go in between and add more long petals. So some of these are ending up very skinny, but it just looks like there's a part that's missing if I don't add them in, so I'm just adding them in. So I just now added another anchoring point, another line all the way around. And you can do that at any point. And since we're not doing anything very precise here, you can just get really free and do that any place, anytime. And not only does this style look really fun and interesting when you're done at the end, but it helps you to stay in a really creative zone. The less you think that you need to create something perfect and precise, the more open you become with your ideas. So after adding that wavy line that kind of reminds me of rickrack, if you know what that is, you sew and add that trim on. Now I'm doing some scallops. And there I was just filling in where I didn't quite meet that line. There's some open circles. And as I add these little circles at the top, I tend to be less concerned with equidistance from the top of whatever scallops and try to make more of an even circles with the circles, the little open circles, or if I were to do little dots or whatever. And again, it's not perfect, but it tends to work out a little bit better. And here it's becoming just a little more awkward to go all the way around with this one design. So I turned it. You can try to adjust or turn it either way. For a while, I tend to get away with drawing in the opposite direction for a while. And then eventually, with the bigger ones, it tends to be more comfortable and less distorted if I just turn the page. So we are at about time on this video. I'm going to start it again on the next one.